Does anybody else get to December and go, how did we get to December so quick? Oh, good. It's not just me. I come to today's worship feeling quite exhausted. My head seems to be spinning with multiple lists of things that need to be done by yesterday. I feel like I've spent a fair bit of the last month or so madly rushing from one thing to the next. And my kids and my wife would definitely confirm that I've been a little bit cranky and things lately. Tired, And I could say that I don't feel particularly happy. And I'm most certainly not at peace. I know I'm not alone in having those sort of feelings at this time of year, if not all and more of those feelings this time of year. It's a bit of a paradox of the Advent season. We're supposed to be patiently waiting and expecting. A season of peace. A time of loving, caring and deepening our relationship with God and other people. And yet for many of us it's the most stressful time of the year, in which the reality is far from the harmonic and peaceful messages we see in Christmas cards and hear in carols. A signpost of hope in the midst of all this came for me from the Gospel reading for today. It starts off in a pretty chaotic way. There'll be signs in the sun, the moon and the stars, and on the earth distress among nations confused by the roaring of sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. That sounds like a pretty topsy-turvy world. And my chaos sounds quite calm compared to that reading, compared with that wildness. And then later Jesus continues saying, take care that your hearts aren't dulled by wild parties and drunkenness and the anxieties of day-to-day life. Hey, Jesus seems to know exactly what can happen to any of us. Our hearts can so easily be dulled or weighed down by the anxieties or the worries of life. And that can blind us to the signs of the coming of the kingdom. Rachel Friedel talks about how these anxieties, worries or fears can be mixed with hope. She says, every day at my community services workplace, our reception area buzzes with a mix of fear and hope. A father comes in to seek an emergency food package, his third for the year. He carries with him the fear that he won't be able to pay both rent and electricity this month. Yet there is hope for a service that can help get his family through the short-term crisis and that his next job application might be successful. Every person carries this potent mix of fear and hope with them. A woman hopes that a financial counsellor can somehow help navigate the debt which has been accumulated in her name by an abusive ex-partner whom she's still terrified of. A couple at breaking point hope that their relationship can be saved, both fearing that the person who was once their safe place has rejected them for good. Fear and hope. A bystander in this scene might only see fear or despair. In the midst of great fear, hope can be hard to spot. yet hope is there, propelling people forward as they seek change and healing. What was it that Jesus said that I mentioned earlier? People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. But the very next verse talks of Jesus coming again. In fact, these terrible things spoken of are themselves signs that the kingdom is near. Jesus encourages his disciples at this time to lift their heads, for their redemption is near. A word of hope in the midst of fear. Many, many times in the past and in our tradition, in the midst of brokenness and fear and injustice and pain, God spoke hope. And he does the same today. There are a myriad of ways we see injustice in our world and in our communities. And equally, there are a myriad of ways that we can glimpse hope in situations that otherwise look dire. Hope is the force which spurs us on. Hope is the healing that people experience in spite of their circumstances. Hope is the reason that fear, despair and frustration aren't where the story ends. Hope doesn't necessarily remove fear and pain. Rather, it transforms those experiences. Hope provides us with energy, strength and desire to walk with people on their quest for justice and safety. Earlier in our Advent candle lighting, we heard the words that love sows the seeds of hope. And where hope springs up, there is life. This must have been on Paul's mind when he tells us what he prays for the Thessalonians, that they may increase and abound in love for one another and for all. Love sows the seeds of hope, and where hope springs up, there is life. The signs we are to look for are signs of life. The fig tree and all its new sprouts of leaves, new life. Those sort of signs are signs that God is near. God's reign is coming. And when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. That's the call from Jesus to his disciples. When you see the faces of those whom you love, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. When you see the beauty of nature all around you, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. When you see acts of such lovely kindness done to you by people that cared for you in bleak, unsheltered times, or when you needed to be loved and minded, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is near. When you think of those unknown people who are the real heroes, who you never hear about, who hold out on lines on frontiers of awful want and awful situations, and manage somehow to go beyond the given impoverishments and offer gifts of possibility and imagination and seeing. Stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. When you are moved by the beauty of words and image in poetry. Stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. When you are moved well beyond the scope of words by the beauty of music, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. When you see shared laughter, joy and tears between two people across unfathomable barriers of religion and culture and gender and race, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Can you find hope in the midst of devastation? When all the signs seem to be pointing to catastrophe, is it possible to see hope? As we begin the time of Advent, the preparation for the celebration of Christmas, can we start to see the world through Advent eyes? The signs of disaster are easy to see. Can we see the signs of hope? When there is death and destruction, can we stand up straight and raise our heads, because our redemption